I do not want my sweet district to have to endure a hurtful and hateful primary against me by the president that we all fought for, only to fight and win my election while Republicans will likely lose the midterms, and in turn be expected to defend the president against impeachment after he hatefully dumped tens of millions of dollars against me and tried to destroy me. It's all so absurd and completely unserious.
Hi again, everybody. It's 5 o'clock in New York. We have now officially entered the MAGA Eat MAGA part of the Trump saga, and the biggest casualty so far in MAGA's increasingly public civil war is a figure created entirely by MAGA's nativist and conspiracy-addicted impulses, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's all of a sudden making a whole lot of sense. That brutal indictment she offers in that video of Donald Trump came after threats made against her and her family in the wake of her very public breakup with Donald Trump. A source telling our team on Capitol Hill that the threats were, quote, the straw that broke the camel's back, end quote, and that she is deeply frustrated by the effort to force a vote on releasing the Epstein files. Facing threats after crossing Donald Trump, feeling like you're swimming upstream against a Trump tide in Congress. And we've seen this movie before. Plenty of Republicans who have crossed Donald Trump have resigned from office or have been driven out of the Republican Party. The last 10 years are littered with examples. Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, Jeff Flake, Bob Corker. We could go on and on. But Marjorie Taylor Greene is decidedly different. She was never part of the old John McCain Republican Party. She was never remotely skeptical of Trump or uncomfortable with his crassness, his grab him in the you-know-what, his January 6th insurrection. Her entire life in politics was born of and nurtured by Trump and MAGA. One of her very first votes in Congress was to dispute the indisputable, the undeniable, the results of the 2020 presidential election. She was stripped of her committee assignments weeks later for promoting conspiracy theories around September 11th and QAnon, and for posts that seemed to endorse violence against Democratic elected officials. But where the exit of other Republicans showed the strength of Trump's grip on the party, Marjorie Taylor Greene stepping back from Congress might illustrate the opposite. A poll out Sunday shows once again that Donald Trump's political standing is at a low point. 60% of all Americans disapprove of Donald Trump's performance as president. And Marjorie Taylor Greene's departure from Congress comes at a moment when Republicans suddenly seem divided not just over the Epstein files. As the New York Times is reporting, the battle cry in her announcement arguing that the Republican Party under Trump has lost its way is a public sign now of how some conservatives are slowly starting to publicly grapple with and imagine a future where Trump's priorities, whims, and vendettas and bizarre utterances no longer steer their movement. Marjorie Taylor Greene's resignation from Congress is a possible potential harbinger of Trump's power waning over his own movement and his own party is where we start the hour. Some of our favorite reporters and friends. Host of the Bulwark podcast, political analyst Tim Miller's here. With me at the table, the host of Fast Politics, New York Times contributing opinion writer, political analyst Molly Jong-Fast is here, and Atlanta Journal-Constitution senior political reporter with us at the table. Greg Bluestein's here. We start with you. We're so happy to have you here.
I'm glad to be here.
Marjorie Taylor Greene is so different from any other different from the Georgia Republicans, from Kemp and Raffensperger and the Republicans who seem to have some normie instincts. She is totally a creature of this MAGA movement, and she is not just leaving, but describing it as certain that they'll lose, certain that she'll be asked to defend Trump from impeachment.
Yeah, we see her as the living, breathing embodiment of MAGA in Georgia because she rose to power at the height of the MAGA movement, right? She wins election in 2020, running on Donald Trump's imprimatur, his very brand. And then when she gets to office, she competes as his biggest defender, the most loyal that MAGA can be. Even when she veered away from some of his stances, she cast it as, oh, he's just getting bad advice. It's not he did anything wrong. He's just getting bad advice from the wrong people around him. And yet, the last year, we've seen this break, one after another. They really heightened, not just doing the shutdown showdown, but also, of course, over the Epstein files. And now the question that we're asking in Georgia, and I know it's being asked around the country, is what does she do next as well?
What does her district think of the position she staked out on the economy, on healthcare, and on Epstein?
Yeah, I was there yesterday and interviewing voters in kind of the rural heartland of her district, and I couldn't find many who criticized her. Most of those voters, that is anecdotal, but most of the voters I talked to were standing by her. Most of the party activists I've talked to are standing by her. To find critics, really deep critics of her, you have to kind of go outside the district. This is MAGA Republicans. That doesn't mean she would have had an easy road to re-election, but I do think had she decided to run for another term, she would have been the odds-on favorite.
And what do you understand about the threats that she and her family faced?
Well, you can't underscore those, right? You cannot underplay that impact of, she said publicly that she was facing threats, but the amount of threats that she's holding back, right, that she's keeping private, must have had a big factor in her decision, because we see it with rank and file Republicans and Democrats all the time. Just imagine someone as high profile as Marjorie Taylor Greene and the threats she faced and her family faced. I mean, unfortunately, this is all too familiar in Georgia, where we saw the Republicans who stood up to Donald Trump in 2022 face dire threats to their own lives.
Yeah, I mean, we ended the last hour with Senator Mark Kelly talking about the threats he faced. Alyssa Slotkin said security rushed to her right after Trump started calling the 6 members who put out a video simply telling people to only follow legal orders to protect their lives. Tim Miller, your thoughts on this moment for Donald Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene?
Yeah, look, you laid out nicely in the beginning how this is similar to how some have, in the Republican Party have spoken out against Trump and then retired in the past. And we're seeing that trend continue, which at some level shows that he still, has a hold over the party. I think that the element that's different, that is the most interesting, is the language that she used in stepping aside. I'll leave it to Greg through his reporting and to psychologists to determine what is happening in her brain and how serious she is about this and what exactly motivating it. But just taking the language at face value, she is basically saying that I wanted to do work on behalf of the MAGA base that Donald Trump had promised, he was going to work for. And I couldn't do it because Congress was never in session and because the elites within the party, have succumbed to the influence game of Washington, to the deep state, to the tech elites, right? That's essentially her argument. Her argument that, you always heard from the populace, from the MAGA populace, one common critique was that there was this uniparty in Washington. Democrats and Republicans might disagree on certain issues, but at the end, they were on the side of the rich, they were on the side of the, military and the security state, and they were on the side of corporations, they weren't on the side of you. Well, now Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying, that's Donald Trump. He had promised you that he was going to be different. He's going to be an outsider that was going to go after those institutions, but he's been co-opted by them, and he likes partying with them. So she didn't use him by name, but in the statement, it's very clear what she's talking about. And that is powerful. And that is very different from the other people that have separated from Donald Trump in the past, because she's coming at him from the place of his core base of support and his core strength. And if even 5% of the MAGA base agree with her, if more do, even better. But if even 5% or 10% agree with her, that is crippling to Donald Trump's power. That is the first time that he would actually lose the people that powered his rise. And so in that sense, I think it was a powerful resignation statement. I think probably would have been more powerful if she was making that argument from within the halls of Congress. But the interesting thing to watch will be if other people start to echo that message.
Tim, are we burying the lead here? She speaks about it as a foregone conclusion that Democrats take over the House and that Trump is impeached.
Well, the impeachment would end up being I think a political judgment by the Democrats, but we probably are bearing the lead as far as a lot of Republicans on the Hill have already basically conceded the midterms. And there's super interesting reporting today from Punchbowl DC, which is kind of a Capitol Hill insider outlet. And basically a number of Republicans were calling them, after Marjorie Taylor Greene's letter came out, saying essentially, I might not agree with her on all the particulars, and she might have these, various unique issues, but the core of her argument is correct. That, we are doing nothing, we are not serving people, we are about to be in the minority, and I'm annoyed too. And essentially that was the message. So there were that there will be maybe more Republican retirements coming because Republicans on the Hill see the writing on the wall that the Democrats are going to win next year. And it's worth it to stay in Congress, even if you're in the minority, if you feel like you're fighting for something, if you feel like you're doing something. And I think that a lot of Republicans on the Hill don't feel like they're doing anything. They're just ornamentation to Donald Trump's authoritarian takeover. And if it's going to be another one-year slog to their own defeat, well, then maybe others will follow her to the exits. That was what Punchbowl is reporting, and that I think seems like a reasonable assessment of where we are. Things could change, obviously, but I think that things are looking very bad politically for the Republicans on the Hill.
Here's that Punchbowl reporting, Molly. Quote, more explosive early resignations are coming. It's a tinderbox. Morale has never been lower. Mike Johnson will be stripped of his gavel, and they will lose the majority before this term is out.
Yeah, what I think is so interesting about this is House Republicans gave up their power. They said, they let Donald Trump do what he wanted to do with the pocket rescissions. They let Russ Vaughn take away the power of the purse. they went along with all of this. He acquiesced again and again and again, and now they're salty because he did what they let him do. Like,
you know what they're like? They're like those prisoners who, when they go in to rescue them, the rescuers are like, the door wasn't locked.
Yeah.
Like they could get out of their political prison today.
At any time. And that's what I don't understand. It's
They're
like
so lame.
It is. And Mike Johnson, by the way, Donald Trump installed Mike Johnson because he was willing to just go along with anything. And now they're like, well, he's not so good at politics because, they're passing all of these.
It's not even Mike Johnson isn't so good at having a